Okay, guys, I'm hoping I can get through a live video. I've learned I need to make them short and sweet. They end up being cut off halfway through, which is really weird to me, and I don't understand why. I am cutting up individual soap dough for my class that I'm teaching. And what I've done is I made these yesterday. This is the neon yellow from Nurture Soap. I made yesterday, and I will wrap them each up individually and let them continue to saponify and cure just that tiny, tiny bit, or harden, not cure, because I'm going to keep them wrapped up. But I'm just doing individual portions. I thought I'd show off these neons because the neons are really, really, really pretty. And I am just weighing them as I cut to make sure that they're all basically the same size, which is around 60 grams. That one's just a little bit more than 60 grams. Now here is the neon orange, which looks a little peach on camera, but it's actually a bright orange. I don't know why it's reading differently. Ooh, this one is a little bit harder. But yeah, I wanted to test out this live thing again, see if maybe it's gotten any better. I am going to be doing nothing but making soap all day today, and I was going to do a live video of soap making, but a lot of you guys have really liked, when it comes to making soap, you tend to like seeing the cut of the soap after I make it at the end of the video. And of course, when you do lives, you can't do that because you're making the soap live, and the cut won't be ready until the next day. Also because the lives tend to cut out on me for some weird reason. And this is the neon pink. And like I said, on camera, coming off pastel, but in real life, they are bright. Super, super bright. But I have noticed most neons tend to wash out oddly on camera, depending on the lighting anyway. I must have poured a little bit more of this than the other one. And I know it's early. A lot of you guys probably won't be able to see the live video, but this is, since I am making soap all day, this is the red neon. Since I am making soap all day, I'm not going to have the chance to go live later on. just making room on my little sheet here. So that I can get all the colors on here. I basically made a rainbow of colors in yellow, orange, pink, red, purple, blue, and green. And then I did a little bit of white that people can use as a highlight color in their flowers. This is the purple. And what I'll do when I finish cutting them is I will wrap them. Because you don't want air to get to the soap, or it will begin to cure, which means it will begin to harden up, and then you can't mold it, and then it's not soap dough if you can't mold it. If you hear me spraying over here, I'm spraying alcohol on my fingers and my little towel to clean as I go. Here's the blue. So what is everyone up to today? Do you have big plans? Are you in the middle of the spring craft fair season? And do you have any fragrance oils that are new or that you're trying for the first time? What do you think? What fragrances are they? Because I have a few ones that are drink fragrances. So it's like Blue Hawaiian, Jamaica Me Crazy. Although Jamaica Me Crazy isn't a new fragrance. I love that fragrance. It's one of my favorites. I had my sister make a room spray for me. That fragrance because I love it so much. Neon Green. Weigh it. Yeah, making these small little bits makes it so much easier when you're teaching a class, because then you don't have to worry about anyone getting too much soap dough at first. You can start with small amounts and work your way up. Because I'll make a second set of soap doughs in the same mold, but cut the pieces larger, just in case people want to make bigger flowers. But when you first start the class, you learn how to make the small flowers, the single flowers first. And this is an intro class, so it's easier to have the smaller amounts. And then I'll make the bigger amounts available for sale in kits as well. Okay, and here's my, I just used titanium dioxide. White is one of the hardest soap doughs because it shows everything. So if there's any kind of dust, any kind of anything floating around in the air, it will stick to the white. And white is an accent color, so you don't need full rounds of it. So I cut them in half. So you can use white to look like dew. You can use it as a highlight color in the middle of a flower. Now, I did use a white to make my soap roses for my butterfly flower soap, which is the white roses red. And I'm sorry if you guys have posted questions. I didn't get to see it while I was cutting. Okay, clean up my area. Like I say, you always clean up as you go. It makes life a lot easier in the long run. Especially days like today, because I am making 4, possibly 5 soaps today. And I will be taking video of them all. And if I don't clean up and wash up and do all of those things as soon as it happens, then it makes things so much harder and it takes so much longer. Okay, I am using saran wrap and I will put it in the middle, and I really solidly wrap it. I want to make sure that it's nice and tightly wrapped, because I do not want any of the air getting to it. That's better. It just makes things easier that way. And I'm just using regular plastic wrap. It works the best because it conforms to the shape. And when you're using it, if you have the plastic wrap, as you use it, you can just keep wrapping it with the same wrap. And when I'm finished doing this, I'll put them in sets, and then I will plastic wrap the whole set and put it in, just to make sure that no air at all is getting to my soap dough. Just makes it easier that way. I don't know if you guys, can you see that it's forming and wrapping around it as it clings to itself? And I just tighten it and spread it out as I go, just to make sure there aren't any air bubbles. The only bad thing about cling film, it clings to itself. Its whole purpose sometimes is hard to use. But these neon pigments are fantastic. I do not fragrance the soap dough for the classes. Like if somebody specifically wants to order a soap dough from me that's a special color and fragrance, I do that. But I don't for the classes, because you never know what fragrances people really like and what fragrances they don't. And it's easier not having to worry about the way the fragrance oil reacts with the pigments and all of those things when you're working with a class. You want all of your colors to work relatively the same way. Is it Bell's Essentials Bell Essentials Handmade? It is nice to talk to you. What kind of products do you make? I always love talking to other soap makers. These are just much smaller little strips of cling film for the white because they're smaller bits. All right, let's see here. Yeah. It's getting super cleany. The class that I'm teaching is at Sam Davis Home. If you're new to my channel, I work at a couple of different mansions throughout Nashville and the surrounding areas. And I teach about the history of soap making. And I tell different little stories about like wives' tales or stories about soap making and the history of things like throwing the baby out with the bathwater and where those things came from. That's way too big. I'll use this one. And I teach about the fact that usually soaps were made by young people, you know, girls in the family usually, and if it was a big family anyway. And that they usually started making soap around 9 years old. At least here in the South. I'm not sure about the soap making rules in other areas. I do know here that's usually the way it went. Things were definitely done on basis of sex. In most large farming households, there were definitely gendered roles within the home. Girls would sew and cook, clean, those types of things. Boys would work outside with the animals on the farm. Unless you were from a very poor family where everybody had to get their hands dirty and everybody had to work on the farm. But most of the mansions, it was either the families themselves or the families would have slave labor, at least before the Civil War, in order to take care of their crops and their houses. But you had to have a lot of money and a lot of land for that. And most farms didn't. And that's one of those subjects that it's sometimes really hard to teach because I teach little kids. And it's really hard to teach how heartbreaking that time period in history was and how hard it had to have been for the slaves working on those farms because they didn't have a choice and they didn't have an option. And those working conditions were often very cruel. But it is part of history, and I am a firm believer that if you gloss over history, you're not actually telling the story. You are telling a revisionist version of it. And if you don't show the ugly of history and the painful of history, then you're bound to repeat that. And no one should want that at all. And that was like a serious tangent I went off on. Sorry. But it is part of history, and it's a depressing and heart-wrenching part of it. Because, and like I said, I know more about the South than I do other parts of the world, the American South. So, you know, gender rules, even up until, well, gender and color rules, even up until the 70s, early 80s, were still pretty solid lines. And it's very sad to think that the world where I live in now is not the same world even 40 years ago. I need this to be bigger. That we've done a lot of growing, but we have so much more to do. Does anyone else out there do anything that has to do with teaching the history of soap making in relation to where they live? If so, let me know, because I'm always open to learning. I have photos of kids making soap in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they are making the lye portion of soap, and they have no shoes on, no gloves. They're working over a hot fire, and they're little, like quite literally 8, 9 years old. And I always think it's so interesting to see that now we have gloves and goggles and all of that when, sorry guys, we got disconnected again. And hello to everyone that said hello. I am so sorry. I hate it when it disconnects like this. It drives me nuts. But when you look at the health and safety regulations from back then, it's pretty solid. But I even talked to my grandfather about different health and safety things that, you know, just in the short term, you know, last 50 or 60 years, how different things are. He remembers someone called the rag man that would go from house to house on certain days of the week, and you would basically trade items. So if you had a pot or a pan that you didn't need, but you did need, say, a horse brush, well, you could trade your pot or pan for the horse brush, or you could just go ahead and buy the horse brush from him. And it was like a buy sale trade Facebook group, but in real life. And he had a little wagon and a horse. And when my great grandmother, my mom's mom, great grandmother, I guess, she lived in downtown Nashville before it was really a downtown. And every Sunday or Saturday, they would have the fire department's wagon go through town. And it was a wagon with white horses. That was their fire truck. And those things I always find super interesting. I know, I hope I'm not boring you guys. One of the best things about my job, beyond the fact that I get to be creative and artistic, and I get to combine science and history with art in a really interesting way, is the fact that I get to work with kids. And I get to teach them. I get to teach them things that they would not otherwise learn, because soap making is such a different process. It's chemical manufacturing, and kids don't usually get to learn skills like this. And while I don't teach them technically how to make soap, I go through the process with them. I walk them through the process. I don't use lye around kids, because kids can do crazy things and you just never know. But we do use melt and pour, and they enjoy that immensely. It's super fun for them to watch it solidify fast. I use really tiny molds so that it solidifies super fast. And I ask them questions, and they come up with some pretty interesting answers for how soap became soap, and what is in soap, and what you use to color soap. Every once in a while you'll come across a kid who has the information, and it's like, I got you. I know. And it's pretty cool. I think kids are way smarter than we give them credit for. But they also come up with, you know, things like soap is made of dirt, and that we wash ourselves with dirt in order to remove dirt, which in a way is true. We're using sodium hydroxide, and we're using oils, and so they get the basic idea, but they don't know how to put words to it. And I even had a student that I was teaching kind of the flowers and the flora that were found on farms and what people use them for. And we made a melt and pour soap with botanicals in it, and we made a sachet with botanicals and essential oils that you would find on that particular farm. And she then went home, and her mom got her own botanicals and her own melt and pour, and she made more soap, and she entered it into her county fair and won. Which, I mean, that to me is incredible, that I had an impact on someone, that they put that much effort in and did such a good job. It made me so proud to have shared that knowledge. Okay, guys, this is getting to take quite some time, and I know it's early in the day. Most of you guys aren't watching it, and I'm just rambling about history and those things that most people probably don't want to hear, but it happens to be what's on my mind right now, because this is going to be for a class. But I will post photos of the finished sets on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. All of them are H&P Artistry. That's HANDPARTISTRY. And go ahead and stop on over there, follow on the different social media platforms, like the video here, subscribe if you haven't, because I post videos that aren't just rambling messes. And this is Heather wishing you luck, love, and a fantastic day. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.